I'm Felix Lee, President and CEO of Willeson Metals Corporation. We are a private junior exploration company with 4 very large gold and base metal properties in the Lynn Lake area of northern Manitoba, Canada.
How are you, Felix?
I'm very good, thanks.
Look, thanks for coming. Well, thanks for joining us, first of all, because we're trying to get at companies early on in their life cycle. You're not yet public, aren't you?
Nope. In the process of going. We're right in the middle of an IPO right now.
Fantastic. Okay, well, you got to come back on and let us know how that went, because
We will. Yeah.
That's a bit of fun. But you're also over here at Mines and Money in London. Why have you made the journey?
We're looking to tap into European investors that may have an interest in gold and base metal properties in Canada.
So, I mean, timing's interesting. You look at gold companies in 2021, all moving sideways or a little bit down. What's happening out there? What's the mood?
Well, it is a tough market, but we don't worry all that much about the usual volatility in the markets. We just focus on what we're doing. Right now, we're in the process of doing an IPO and going public, and the markets will be what they will be.
Okay, you're confident that the world needs another gold company?
Absolutely, especially the one that we have here in Canada at Willeson Metals.
Good stuff. Hey, well, we know a little bit about you because we were kind of contacted by someone over in Canada. They got a little bit excited about what you're putting together and the team as well. So let's start with the team and you specifically. What's the background? What's the relevant experience?
Right. I'm an exploration geologist by background. I've been in the business now for around 35 years. Really had the opportunity to explore and work around the world in places like Central Africa, West Africa, Central Europe, Southeast Asia, Brazil, Mexico, and of course in Canada. Most recently, up until March of this year, I was on the board of the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, otherwise known as PDAC or PDAC. And I spent the last 2 of those 14 years as the president of the association. So I have been around for quite some time. I joined Willeson in January of last year after having spent a good chunk of my career in the consulting side of the industry. And I was really looking to sink my teeth, as it were, into a good project, work with a good team, and that's exactly what we have at Willeson Metals.
Okay, so you're pretty well connected, and from the consulting side and also PDAC. So was the team already established when you joined, or have you gone about putting together the team that you want?
We were in the process of pulling the team together.
Right.
It is one of the things that's very, very important to me is to pull together a very, very strong team, one that not only is able to make discoveries happen, but make them happen in a way that is socially responsible, environmentally responsible, and in a safe manner. That's something that's very, very important to me. And so we have pulled together a team which I believe allows us to do that at Willeson. And I'm happy to actually, just maybe introduce some of the team members, give you some sense of
do that, because I tell you what, every company now is following that narrative, yeah. Okay? Some can and some can't, but you're all saying the same thing. So it's hard for us to differentiate between the good guys and the people who are just saying it for a fact. So tell me about your team. What's so special about it?
Right. So we are a very, very young company, and we do have limited resources, but nevertheless, we have pulled together a very, very strong team. And I'll touch on why I think Willeson has a slight advantage over other companies. So firstly, we have our VP Expiration. His name is Ian Trinder. He actually comes from Manitoba. Actually started his career working in the Lynn Lake area, working for Sherritt Gordon. So he is very, very familiar with the Lynn Lake region of Canada. He's also an individual that I've worked with now for some 15 years in the consulting side of the industry. He has not only worked with consultants and junior exploration companies, but also worked with major companies. So I'm just tickled pink to have him aboard. He's just someone that I've worked with for many, many years, someone that I'm very reliant on. As well, the chairman of the company is an individual named Shastri Ramnath. For those in the Canadian mining and exploration space, many of them will have heard of Shastri Ramnath. She's very, very well regarded and considered a bit of a rising star in the industry. She happens to also be from Manitoba, and she maintains some very, very strong connections within the province, both with government and industry. And she actually currently chairs a government liaison committee, which is focused on making improvements within the province to make the province of Manitoba one of the best mining jurisdictions in which to invest and explore. And so she is very, very active on that front, actively working with government to make changes in terms of policy and procedures and streamlining things happening in Manitoba. So we do have very strong connections into the province. Now coming back to sort of making discoveries happen and making them happen in a responsible manner, we rely on a number of consultants, and through Shastri's other companies, Shastri Ramnath's other companies, we actually have access to a lot of talent and expertise. So one such person, for example, is Gord Morrison. Gord is, he's a serial mine finder. That's how I describe him. He's been credited now with the discovery of some 13 major deposits, 6 of which are now in production and 4 of which are at the feasibility stage. Gord has been working very, very closely with our technical team, designing our exploration programs and reviewing the data that we have on hand. As well, we have a fantastic geophysicist who's working with us, Alan King. Alan used to be the chief geophysicist for Vale, and I think before that, Inco as well. And so he's an extremely talented, very, very well-connected individual, again, who's been helping us with the early stages of exploration, where we're quite reliant on geophysical surveys to do our evaluation of our projects. On the sustainability side, we have an individual named Valerie Pascali. She comes to Willeson from Goldcorp. And during her 12 years at Goldcorp, she was essentially responsible for building Goldcorp's CSR framework from the ground up. And she's been very active spearheading Willison's community engagement efforts, particularly with First Nations groups in the Lynn Lake area of Manitoba. And we've been making extremely good headway on that front despite the COVID-19 pandemic. And the travel restrictions, and I'm not sure if you're aware here in the UK, we had quite a number of wildfires across northern Canada, and Manitoba was no exception, and so that also hampered travel in the region. But despite all of that, we've forged ahead with establishing a very strong relationship with First Nations right now. And I've actually just last week come from a meeting with Chief and Council with one of the First Nations groups that we're dealing with, and we're now in the process of establishing an exploration agreement, and
okay.
We should have that in place very soon.
Okay, well, you can keep us up to date with how things progress there. Let's get to the money bit, which is you have selected Manitoba, and you've got some data on the assets that you're looking at, right? Historic data. So where have you inherited or bought this from?
Thanks for asking that question. So the 4 projects that Willeson has were originally staked by a company called Expiration Minerals, right, which is essentially our parent company. Yeah. Expiration is chaired, is essentially run by Shastri Ramnath. Right. Okay. And Expiro's business model, it's an interesting one. They are focused on acquiring or getting access to the huge troves of historical exploration data, right, that tends to be found nowadays in people's basements and in their garages. These are the old map tubes full of rolled up maps, boxes and boxes of paper, drill logs and reports. And Shastri's company, Expiration, gets hold of this data. They then digitize it, and then they essentially mine it, and they identify missed or hidden opportunities. Right. Okay. And so the 4 properties we have in Willeson were essentially identified this way. Okay, gotcha.
So, and she does this. She does this and sells this data off to companies like yours. Takes a slice of your company as a result of this, or she actually put cold hard cash into this as well.
Yeah, so something like that. So Expiration will basically stake the properties. They'll advance them to a point, and then roll them out or spin them out into a vehicle such as Willeson Metals, which eventually the idea will be to take the company public. And in exchange for that, Expiration gets shares of the new company. So promissory notes.
Percentage, what she own or they own?
Currently, Exaro is at around 26%.
Okay.
And the idea will be to progressively dilute from that point forward.
So she hasn't put money in, and she's not going to put money in, but she'll be diluted as you raise capital going forward.
Exaro has participated in pretty much all of the financings up to this point. But once we're public, the goal will be to basically start to dilute down.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So that's the beginnings and the origins of all of this. But you looked at this data and went, you know what? There's something here. Okay, well, you and your team look. There's something to this. I can work with this. So you're coming in. You're going to go public out of the gate, which is what Canadian companies do. Drop of a hat. That's what you do to raise capital for it. So when are you going public? How much money will you be raising during that process?
Okay. So we're right in the middle of an IPO right now. We're looking to raise around $6 million, half of which will be hard dollars, half of which is flow through. Mm-hmm. There is an over-allotment of around 15%. So we can raise up to, on the hard dollar side, so we can raise up to around, I think, 3.6 there around million hard.
What's that allow you to do?
Pardon?
What does that allow you to do?
It allows us to explore the 4 properties that we have in the Lynn Lake area. In particular, our flagship project, which is the Bocage project.
Right.
That is the project that will be basically the focus and pretty much where we'll be spending the lion's share of the funds that we do raise.
Glad you said that. Yep. So, because four projects and a small amount of cash at a company that's starting off is usually a disaster. So when you say the bulk of the money's going there, I mean, what do we say? 80%? Into
Bocage. So primarily our drilling.
Right. Okay.
We are planning to drill at least 8,000 to 10,000 meters on Bocage. We believe that is the minimum amount of drilling that we will need to drill on the property to get an idea as to whether or not we have something there or not,
right?
And whether or not we should be reprioritizing our projects, downplaying Bocage maybe if we don't have anything, and moving on to another project.
So why start there? Why you've got 4, right? So what encourages you to start there?
Well, Bocage is the one project that we have the most historical data for. So we're further along the curve, if you will, with Bocage.
What do you think it says to you?
Well, Bocage is really interesting. There is a lot going on there. It's an early stage project, but also not so early stage. There's some 53 historic drill holes on the property alone, and these are spread across 6 known historic high-grade gold showings that were identified by previous operators. We've staked additional ground to the south of these 6 showings, and we fully expect that we'll identify additional targets in the southern half of the property going forward.
Okay, and with regards to the 53 holes, is some of the drilling you're doing twinning or just validating what the historic data?
We're not twinning any of the holes.
Right. Okay.
We're not really looking to validate any of the holes. We are really focused on doing our own work, which is essentially around the 6 known gold showings. So the drilling right now will be focused on 3 of those 6 showings. Late last year, we did an airborne magnetic survey over all of Bocage, and then we did 3D inversion studies of that data. And what's come out of that study has been very, very interesting to us. The study has allowed us to identify the major structures that are associated with the 6 known showings, but more importantly, which of those structures actually has considerable depth extent that warrants further exploration by drilling. And so 3 of the 6 showings that we have are located on structures that have significant depth potential. And so those are the structures we're going to be drilling.
So that's what we're looking at. So I'm trying to work, out the kind of almost the cost of running your business going forward. So we're looking at deep structures. What type of showings do you understand from the previous drilling? Is it relatively high grade, and if so,
it can be significantly high grade.
Right.
So some of the historic results from Bocage have been in the hundreds of grams per ton.
Okay.
We even have a result that is 1.8 kilograms per ton in a grab. So there are some very, very high grades. But on average, I would say typically we're looking at around 6 to 7 grams per ton on average grade.
Okay. Because there's the sort of some rule of thumb that if you're looking clearly at underground, there you need over 4 grams typically to actually economically mine, right? So it looks like you're onto.
Yeah, so I think what we would like to identify on the property is probably somewhere in the range of 18 gram meters in terms of our drill results. And so obviously, we can go lower grades over greater widths in the shallower depths, higher grades over more narrow widths in sort of deeper depths. But ultimately, we're looking for around 18, probably 15 to 18 gram meter results with our drill results.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works. And with regards to let me talk about Manitoba very quickly, because you talked about what Shastri was doing earlier in terms of helping make Manitoba a better place to mine, right? I think there's some provinces like Quebec which are very, very pro and very helpful on the financing side of things. So, and we met a few companies here based in Manitoba. There are a few. What's it like now versus what Shastri's vision of what it needs to be like? Are you going to encounter any difficulties? We talked about First Nations, which is obviously it's a whole art in itself, and you've got to manage that very carefully in Canada. With regards to the government, do they make life difficult at the moment? Is that what she's suggesting?
No, I would say government right now is extremely supportive of the industry.
Okay.
There's always a bit of education involved when you're bringing politicians along and making them much more aware of the mining and exploration industry and the roles that it can play.
It's a financial one, isn't it, for them? Isn't it jobs, taxes, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
That's what.
But in terms of the support that the province is giving, it's there. It's always been there. Manitoba, actually, of all the Canadian provinces and territories, has always had the biggest or healthiest fiscal incentives in place to encourage mineral exploration and mining in the province. There are a few things, obviously, that can still be improved. One being the permitting process in the province. And the government is currently actively working to streamline the permitting process. So things are all heading in the right direction for the province. So really kind of what remains is to try and promote the province amongst explorationists. Manitoba has tended to always be overlooked relative to other provinces and territories in the country. And there's why that is a bit of a mystery for some. I'm speaking with a bit of my PDAC hat on right now, and it's always been a bit of a mystery to those of us at PDAC as to why Manitoba seems to have a hard time attracting explorationists and exploration activity compared to other provinces. We're not really sure why that is, but it does.
Is it more expensive? Is it
not at all. Not at all.
What are the factors you're looking at and go, you know what, we should stack up on these?
Well, and I'm sure we go with our Willeson hat on. Okay. Because it has largely been ignored or sometimes overlooked or forgotten as a place to explore. It's a province that's actually full of opportunities.
Is it full of miners though, and skilled
labor? and for an explorationist. So, the 4 properties that Willeson has in the Lynn Lake area, they're enormous. Combined, they cover some 24,000 hectares, close to 240 square kilometers, and we are essentially the second largest land position in the Lynn Lake area. The largest land position is actually Alamos Gold. They're very, very active in the Lynn Lake area. They have their Lynn Lake project, which is at the feasibility stage, and they're currently pushing to permit that project and eventually put their 2 past producing mines back into production. Our properties essentially lie right next to it. They adjoin Alamos's ground, and pretty much together with Alamos, we tie up the entire Lynn Lake greenstone belt.
Yeah, we've had them on the show.
Yeah, so I think that kind of speaks a little to how the province has been kind of forgotten and maybe overlooked by explorationists for a small company like Willeson or actually our parent company, Expiration, to go into Manitoba and essentially stake essentially the second largest land position in the Lynn Lake area, I think just goes to show how it's kind of been overlooked.
I think you can stop calling them your parent company now, can't you?
Okay, yeah.
You're in charge.
Yeah, we are. I know.
Well, okay, and with regards to the actual money side of things, you talked about how much you're looking to raise and perhaps the deployment. Where's it coming from? Is it going to be mostly retail at this point, or because of your PDAC pass, are you going to be able to introduce some institutional at this early stage?
Willeson does enjoy the support of some very large institutional investors. We have RCF, Haywood Securities, Dundee, and Sprott USA as our shareholders. We're really looking to tap in more into the retail side. We do want to establish that larger shareholder base, if you will.
Get the liquidity moving.
Yeah.
Get the excitement right. And how do you play? What I'm trying to understand the man. Okay, so how do you play this? Because you've had in PDAC, you've got to be, quite unbiased, right? You can't show bias in too many ways. So we've seen companies come on here and they do the headline grabbing. Here, look at these high grade headlines, and we get people excited that way, but there's nothing backing it up. Or are you more systematic about the way that you're going to approach this and communicate that into the marketplace? Where do you position yourself from sensationalist to scientist?
I would say we're sort of somewhere in the middle. We're certainly not sensationalists. We do want to do good exploration. That's what I'm in this business for. That's what my colleagues are in this business for. That's what we pulled Willeson Metals together to do. We will be approaching our 4 projects and exploring them systematically. Our focus will be Bocage. We do have our second priority project, which is our Hatchet property. We will be advancing that just to ensure that we maintain a strong project pipeline.
Yeah.
But then equally important to me and the team is also developing the community relations side of the business. And as I mentioned earlier, we have been very, very active on that front at a very, very early stage. So it's equally important to me that in addition to how we go about doing our exploration, that we bring the local community along with us. And so, that's something that is it's right at the front of what we do. It's very important that we establish those relationships with the local community and be as transparent as we can about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing it. Our goal ultimately is to engage and bring local community into our exploration efforts to actually get them involved. We are a small company. We are limited in what we can do, but we do want to explore the possibilities. We want Willeson to be an example of what could be, what an exploration company can be, and leave a positive legacy that way. Ultimately, we want to be seen as a partner of choice, a company that not only does government want to do business with, investors want to invest in, but also local community wants to work with us.
I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
And that's the right thing to say. You've also got another audience, which is a bunch of rabid investors who are like, are these guys delivering value? Yeah. Are they making me money? And these days you've got to get that balance right. And I think the momentum is moving towards the kind of responsible language that you are talking today, which is fantastic. But don't forget the shareholders. They're a big part
not at all. Not at all. So we're definitely not forgetting shareholders. I think I firmly believe that if you want to truly deliver value, not only do you need to do the right exploration to get the results that you want, and identify the projects that you need, by being seen as the partner of choice, not only with government but also local community, you pave the way for much smoother business. So in terms of getting your project permitted, in terms of getting consent from the local community, and particularly First Nations, to carry out the exploration that you want to carry out, you do yourself a whole lot of favors by doing the necessary legwork up front. So I don't see one as being separate from the other. It's all part of the same thing.
Brilliant.
It's all part of being a good explorationist.
Felix, lovely to meet you. Welcome to London. I hope you get out of here with that Omicron on the way back home. Apologies for dragging you over here for that. Great story, nice team. I'm excited for what you're going to do. Go get listed first, would you? And then we can follow you even more earnestly.
Yeah, will do.